If the pace is too slow or too fast, fix it. For a long time, many scientists believed that the neck of the giraffe was long because that's what the giraffe really wanted. Meaning that generation after generation, the giraffe has been stretching and stretching to reach higher branches, and the neck got extended. First to put forward this hypothesis was the French scientist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck in the early 19th century. This hypothesis was later criticized, but even today a large number of people believe that evolutionary changes occur due to the body becoming aware of its missing needs. And, over time, the body's wish list somehow comes into existence. However, once scientists discovered the genes, they realized that neither the body's skills nor its wishes are passed on by inheritance. The only attributes that are transmitted by inheritance are those that are in the genes, and neither our desires or skills can affect our genes. It's our genes that form us, not we that form our genes. And thus the giraffe's neck became longer not because of the giraffe's needs, but solely because of a random mutation in the genes, in one of its offspring, at some point. We could make a full stop here, or we could continue, since now the mutations have to go through natural selection. If a giraffe with such a mutation turns out to be more adapted than other giraffes in the same conditions, sooner or later its descendants with a valuable mutation will displace the short-necked offspring. From this point on, all giraffes will have a long neck, which all started with a random mutation, in just one individual. Come on. It's one thing to change something that already exists, like a neck to extend, or legs, and another to create a new organ from scratch. So you say that at first all that started with the simplest unicellular, then multicellular, then some branch to the left and others to the right. Yet each of them, without fail, were gifted with newer and newer organs. And so what? All of these is the result of a sequential accumulation of random errors? Evolution, creation, or... So, where did it all come from? The options: evolution, creation. We will come to the or later. Right now, let's only admit that there are several evolutionary theories. First is evolution as its proponents see it. Second is evolution as its opponents see it. There's a third, a fourth, and a fifth version, but for now we'll just focus on the first two. If evolution were explained to you by its proponents, then by its critics, you discover two very different evolutions. If you don't rush to trust one or the other, but rather read between the lines of both, one and the other, you can gain a lot. Examples? Let's get started. We'll look at both perspectives in turn. Version 1. Evolution from its critic's perspective. Imagine Archimedes out walking one day, stumbles across an antenna. Imagine also that this antenna somehow was receiving a signal from the future. What would Archimedes need to be able to watch a movie? Well, Archimedes would certainly have to realize that, 1, what he'd found wasn't just a piece of metal, but an antenna. A what? 2, that the antenna was receiving a signal. Look at Archimedes' expression, signal? You no doubt recall that the antenna, wire and signal weren't discovered until thousands of years after Archimedes' death. Archimedes would have needed to know that there are a whole variety of signals, and therefore he must know 3, the type of signal, audio or video for example, and 4, what were the signal's parameters, i.e. frequency, modulation or coding, and 5, what output device is needed, a screen, headphones or what. Any missing link in the diagram would mean no movie. Plug the video into headphones or audio into the screen, and you'll either get noise or nothing at all. And of course, audio and video are not the only possible kinds of signals. There are an unlimited number of signals in nature, making this an even more difficult task. All of this is obvious for us today, but were Archimedes to hear us, he'd either think we were idiots or that we were making an idiot out of him. The message here is simple. If you don't know where the signal comes from and what it is for, you'll do nothing with it. Even if you understand what signal means, all you can do is try connecting it to the equipment you may have and treat it like a signal you know. But what if it is a strange new signal that nobody has dealt with before? Yet this is exactly how new organs come into being, with the organisms themselves having no idea why they've occurred, what they're for, or how to drive them. Yes, today I can use sign language, but in the past we didn't even have hands. Everything happened once for the first time. How was all of that possible? Easy, if you believe in evolution. Once upon a time, humans were worms. Or rather, they had some ancestor in common, which does make a difference, but not in our example. Once upon a time, humans were worms. While they happily delved in the mud, their genes actively mutated. One mutation, another. That was not always a success, since mutation is a lottery. Make or break. There were many more harmful mutations. Many of us then simply died. All over our bodies, there were outgrowths. Sometimes we would wriggle out of the ground. Then something prevented our return. Ancestor Chronicle, page 666. Of course, something could be exaggerated in the Chronicle. Alas, it did happen to our ancestors even then, during wild evolution. Yet this is not the point. Just imagine what it must have been like to experience all the devastating experiments of evolution without ever knowing what it was all for. And it was just the way new organs appeared.
I'm coming down with a fever.
She's getting legs. Legs?
That's true.
Oh, dear.
I'm driving only 3 wheels these days.
But that
is... You might say, what a banter. Wait a moment, aren't we talking about random mutations? And how does randomness work? Wouldn't you, for example, agree that right now your genes randomly mutate? Would you? But how then is evolution meant to work? The thing is, after mutation comes selection. And this selection has already a sort of logic. This means that evolution has 2 stages. First, origination or birth or emergence, and then selection. These are 2 separate processes, but they often get mixed up. And we must separate the buyers from the spiers. Stage 1, things happen without any logic, leading to a bunch of mutants. Stage 2, of all the possible mutations, the best of the best are selected. And we are at stage 1. Do what you can, come what may. Let's keep going. Now it's time to get into the alien shoes to see what it really looked like. Not everyone knows that the worm has a brain, but it does. One day after regular mutations, something began to grow from the brain. A nerve. Why a nerve? Why did it start growing? Remember the answer, it will always be the same. That's just how it happened. Forget asking why random mutations led to this or that. That's just how it happened. We move on. As time went by, the nerve got longer and longer. When on a sudden, something new accidentally started to form at its end. The brain tensed. What was this new formation, and what should be the response? And that's when the brain can be understood. According to evolution, anything new is a complete puzzle. What new issues might it have to deal with? Is this for good or for harm? The brain does not see. It only feels. Nothing, then suddenly something. Is it a tumor? Then the brain makes some assumption. that it was, in all likelihood, a receptor. Where did the brain get it from? Who knows? Could it be mistaken? Well, what do you think? I personally doubt that the brain could do anything on its own. Brain on its own? What do I mean, right? We'll talk about it later. As for now, the brain managed to make more progress on its own than Archimedes would have done with the antenna, figuring out nothing, had we even given him a clue. You see, Archimedes was not only a brain, but a brain with a master, who would not even understand that it was an antenna. But the brain on its own guessed it right. Hey, that's a receptor. Okay, we'll assume that the brain made the guess and made it correctly. Thus, a nerve has grown from the brain. Some sensitive receptor has formed at its end. The brain has unraveled this combination and, well, began receiving signals. And that's how new organ whatchamacallit developed, allowing us to flimminy flim-flam. And if you perhaps think it's a joke, it nevertheless raises a question. Or rather two. What kind of receptor happened to grow, and how did the brain have to interpret it? Despite the fact that everything new happens to appear spontaneously by itself without reasoning or intention, one day in our worm, out of an infinite number of possible formations, it happened to appear, let's say, some receptor. And out of an infinite number of possible receptors, it turned out to be not any, but, say, a photoreceptor, which had never existed before since it appeared for the first time. The brain, in turn, has accidentally figured out the puzzle, and purely by another accident from an infinite number of signals, by chance alone, managed to tune exclusively into a video signal, knowing nothing about what the signal is nor what it does. And then by another accident, it brought this information out not as a flavor or pain or temperature or euphoria or fear or moisture or tickling or attraction or nausea or orgasm or dizziness or sound or anything. No. Of all the possibilities, the brain decided to send out the result as the previously unknown concept of a visual image. By chance alone, from an endless number of options, the brain settled on the only right decision, to send out a picture. But to whom then did the brain send the picture? Us? Which means there is us and there's brain. Or did the brain send this information as an image out to itself? In which case, we equals the brain. Earlier, I compared the brain of Archimedes to the brain on its own. Was that what I'm talking about now? Oh no. We'll talk about the brain on its own when we get to the genes. As for now, we have a brain, we have genes, and we have us. And somehow all of these have to interact. But it's time to break off and relax. Let me remind you, this is the theory of evolution as its opponents see it. Later we will also consider evolution through the eyes of its proponents. Then we'll compare. Until our next coincidence.